is 6:37, and we are now back in open session. Can I have welcome everyone, and I'd like to ask everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first item is public participation. Marilyn, do we have anyone signed up for tonight's meeting? Okay. There will be another opportunity for public participation at the end of our meeting. So if anyone would like to make a comment to the board at the end, please just go out into the hallway and fill out a blue form, and we would call a second opportunity for any of those public comments. Okay, our next agenda item is an update regarding the Village of Willow Springs Town Hall meeting. On Tuesday, November 28th, the Village of Willow Springs held a town hall meeting to discuss the results of their zoning study related to the parcel of land in which LTHS owns 70-plus acres. Several representatives from our leadership team attended the meeting, including Vice President Jill Gretsch, Superintendent Dr. Brian Waterman, and Business Director Brian Stachek. Vice President Jill Gretsch spoke on the behalf of the District 204 Board of Education, noting that she and the other LTHS representatives were there to listen and to continue to support collaboration with the village. During the meeting, the land use consultant hired by the Village of Willow Springs presented a summary of their findings, which were made public at that meeting. This was the first time representatives from District 204 had heard the outcome of the zoning assessment. It's important to note that John Hausiel, representative of the consulting firm, recommended that the current zoning be maintained. As the board knows, the Village of Willow Springs enacted an ordinance imposing a moratorium on future development in the North Willow Springs corridor where our property resides. This moratorium will expire on March 1st of 2024 unless the village takes additional action. During the public comment section of the meeting, comments made suggest that some may believe that the board is actively engaged in the sale of the land and that there is litigation pending related to this property. I'd like to clarify that the board is not actively engaged in the sale of the property, that there are no potential buyers for the property, and there is no pending litigation with respect to this district-owned property. The board remains committed to considering the utilization of the Willow Springs property as an asset toward achieving Goal 5 of our strategic plan, which includes upgrading and enhancing our campuses to meet 21st century learning standards. The board recognizes and appreciates the feedback we've received on this important process, and we will continue to seek community input. Any future Board of Education discussions on this topic will be publicly posted per our normal procedures. Okay, our next agenda item is finance, and this evening we will be preparing a report on the fiscal year 23 audited financial statements, and it will be a presentation that will begin with Director Brian Stachek.
Thank you, President Robert. So every year at this time of the year, we wrap up our audit from the prior year. And so, of course, we don't do that. That is an independent auditing firm that does that for us. Tonight we have somebody, a partner from the firm, formerly Eder Casella, which was the company that we signed the contract with originally, and changed the name to Excezion. Is that correct, Sheridan? Yeah, Excezion last year. So that's why you're probably seeing the two different names in there. And so really, we'll talk a little bit about the financial part of this here coming up. But again, Sheridan Jurgensen, partner with the firm, is here tonight, and as she has been the last several years, to kind of talk about the process, what the auditors look at, what they do, and then how they kind of come up with this report. So that being said, Sheridan, I would let you kind of take the floor and kind of talk a little bit about how we got here with this audit report, financial statements.
Sounds good. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sheridan Jurgensen. As Brian said, I'm one of the audit partners at Excezion. I've been involved with the audit for several years now. Actually, we are currently, audit report you do have is still in draft form. There's a few minor things that we're still waiting for, just some wording that we need to put in the audit report, and then that will be finalized. It is due on the 15th to ISB, so it will be done in the next week. So that's the status of the audit. Overall, the audit went very well. The first thing in the audit report is our opinion, and it's several pages that kind of just summarize what we do as part of the audit, but really what it's saying that based on the testing that we did, that all of the accounts that we looked at and what we looked at, the processes that we tested, that we felt that the financial statements were free from material misstatement. And in there it talks about internal control, and we are not giving an opinion on your internal control, but we spend a lot of time looking at it. And we're not only looking at the written policies and procedures that districts has, which is very important, but more importantly looking at making sure that the individuals who are processing those transactions are following those written policies and procedures. And so sitting down with the people that are processing payroll and processing receipts as they come through, et cetera, just to make sure that those policies are being followed, as well as looking at those to make sure there's proper control, there's proper review, second checks, and all of that. If there was ever an issue, we would be bringing that to you. We found no concerns as far as internal controls for this year. In the audit report, there's two sets of financial statements. The first one is the government-wide financial statement. I really don't spend any time on that. It's more on a long-term outlook statement. So it shows all your long-term debt, your fixed assets, your pension liabilities, et cetera. But also in the audit report is your financials that are kind of basically by fund. So kind of more used to what you're seeing on a monthly basis. And so on page 19, it shows the results of each fund. It shows overall there was an increase of $7.9 million for the year. The general fund, which is the ed fund, and working cash had about a $4 million increase before the transfer to capital projects, and operations and maintenance had about an $8 million increase, and then $5 million was transferred to capital projects. So overall, a $7.9 million increase that was brought to the fund balance. In the audit report, there is footnotes that give a lot more detail on the policies and procedures. There was a new standard that we implemented this year. Last year, I talked about the lease standard that we implemented this year. Very similar, but we were looking at your subscription-based IT agreements. So software that you're using for curriculum or finances, whatever it would be. Obviously, there's a lot of those now, and so that was a lot of work for the business office as well as us to be looking at those and just making sure that those are accounted for properly with the new standard. So there's a footnote in there for that. And then the last part of the audit report is the single audit. And that's the testing that we do for the federal grants that you get. And so this year we looked at ESSER, and we had one minor item that we found as part of that. We have different levels of, say, findings, and there's deficiencies, and then there's what's called an other matter, and this was an other matter, so definitely not a significant deficiency by any means. Is some reporting that needed to be done, and there was just some differences in how expenses were reported. Overall, the amount was correct. It was just kind of the buckets that they fell. Ultimately, it was just an information reporting. It had nothing to do with actually reporting the expenses for the grant, which is why it's not a deficiency. So just something that we're required to report because that is something that the feds asked for, but overall, no issue as far as anything related to the grant. The other thing that we do provide as part of the audit is the AFR that goes to ISBE. In there, they calculate your financial profile, which has been, it's a scale of 0 to 4, 4 being the best. In the past, it's been a 4, and this year as well, it is estimated to be a 4. So. Overall, good news. Again, the audit went really well. Thank you to Kathy, thank you to Brian, and everyone else for getting us the information. It just increases every year the amount of information we need, so really appreciate their help in doing that. So I will answer, though, any questions you might have.
My only question was, how long does it take your firm then to conduct this audit?
We are out here typically it's about a week. Obviously, with the way things are, a lot can be done remote now, so we try to get a lot done before we come out here. But yeah, it's typically a week on site and then probably another week, week and a half to finish everything. Granted, that spans typically a couple months just due to information you're trying to get from various sources to get all that together.
And of course, yeah.
I'll hear about.
Great news. I don't want to, but constantly we have great news when it comes to our audits, when it comes to our financial status and our ratings, and it's critical to be able to continue to deliver the high-quality education that we're providing for our students. So thanks to all that for continuing to do just an exemplary job to make all of that possible. And thank you for your efforts in verifying that that's the case.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much appreciated.
I'll just say the one thing that stood out for me, not a question necessarily, more of a comment, something I didn't know, that if I'm correct in this, that since 2003 that we've moved up 3 rating points to AAA over the last 20 years?
I don't know when we first achieved the AAA rating for our bond issuances, but I believe it's been at least, well, I know it's the current issue. It was the one prior to that, and I think the one prior to that for sure. So yeah, we've been in that category, and we're still there, thankfully.
Again, a huge applaud to you and your team for, I mean, that's not an easy feat to happen over 20 years to go up three ratings, so that's pretty excellent.
And I will just add, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Kathy, and the entire business team office for all the work that you guys have done over the years and continue to do, and we really appreciate it, and thank you for the audit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sheridan. Thank you. So just a couple of other points that I'd like to touch on with this. First of all, I think I tell the board every year that this is really, truly my final exam, right, from the fiscal year. And, put it in school terms, and I feel like it went really well. So, that's always good. And before we touch on the financial side of this quickly, first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Kathy. Kathy is an integral part of this, not just at the time of the audit, but throughout the entire year, as we're, making sure the internal controls, everything is balanced, everything is reconciled, all of that, sort of thing. And so Kathy does an excellent job of that. So Kathy, thank you very much. And it's also an effort from all of the really district level offices, because they look for a lot of information. They'll come in and they'll ask for certifications from the HR department. They'll ask for information on the grants from Scott Eggerding's office. And so really it's an entire effort from all of the district level offices. So I think thanking them is really a big part of this as well too. So hopefully I'm not missing anybody. Kathy, am I missing anybody? No. Okay, great. Thanks. And of course the auditors.
Besides yourself and your leadership.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But anyway, so what I kind of wanted to do, and this is what, and again, these are still draft. We'll have the final for the acceptance at the regular board meeting here in December. And so I typically put these in because, it's the financial part that a lot of people look at. Of course, the auditors are looking at other things as well, right? But I say, how do we do financially in this particular year? What happened? And so I think we're off by one page. So mine is 111. I think yours would be 112, if I remember correctly, in the packet. And so if you begin on that page, you'll see that is the district, the revenue report for the district for this year. And again, these are the operating funds. Couple of points about that. First of all, I do not include the bond and interest fund in that operating revenue, because it truly isn't an operating revenue. That's really more of a clearing account where the money comes in to the bond and interest fund, and then of course our bonds are paid out of that. That's the only operation inside of that fund. So we don't include that. The state of Illinois does not include the IMRF Social Security Fund, Fund 50. I do. And the reason I think it's important to include that is because if you have salaries, you have to pay Social Security, IMRF, Medicare, all of those things. So I include it in there as well. Now, again, there is no other activity in that fund. The only time the state of Illinois includes is if it has a negative balance. And I'm like, well, if you have a negative balance, you're in a lot of trouble in that particular point. So, but I include it anyway in here, so as one of the operating funds. And so, beginning again, I think it's page 112 for you. You see what it looks like in terms of the total revenue there. And again, remember, we're still in a situation here where our corporate personal property replacement taxes were over $11 million this year. I'll take it while it lasts, and I don't know if it's going to last like that, forever. And again, as I said, if you recall, in this year's, in the FY24 budget, we're down to about $7.5 million what we budgeted, and we think we're pretty close with that number. So I don't know if it'll ever go back down to the historical $3.2 to $3.5 million, but I'm not sure it's also going to stay at $11 million either. So something we have to monitor and keep looking at. And so there you see the total revenues on page 112, and then on 113 you see that these are the expenditures. And again, these are both of them are actually out by objects, right? And so in the revenues, it's local sources, state sources, and federal sources. Then when we get down to the expenditures, we break it out by salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, other. And remember that other, the majority, probably 98% of that is tuition for students who attend other schools out of district, in particular in the education fund. And then we have our non-capital equipment, which is something new that we've started using last year as a recommendation from our auditors. And so you see all those broken down by every fund there. And you see the budgeted amount, the grand total amount at the bottom. And then on page 114, this is kind of where you see all of this put together. And so really what this does is this gives you a picture of everything that went on in each fund, and then we're combining all of it. Now, the difference from this spreadsheet this year to what you've seen in the past is, as you recall, we moved $8.9 million into the capital projects fund on a transfer from both the education fund and the O&M fund to cover our projects from last year, from the summer of 23. And so it's a little different because you have not seen this with the capital projects fund before. So if you look in column H, you'll see that the operating funds, I have the totals for all of those across. Columns B, C, D, E, and F, which do not include the capital projects fund. So you get an idea of how we operated without that expense, right? So on our operating side, you see how that looks. And then in column I, you see that included with all of those. Okay, now we put the capital projects fund back in. But remember, this is a little different this year because we are not funding these projects with operating expense. We funded them with the some available fund balance that we had. So it's a little different operation in terms of what we're looking at. So if you look at, just quickly, if you look at on line 5, there's a beginning fund balance up there. And so you'll see the different funds up there, and then you see the capital projects fund, that $8.9 million. I've included that in there. But that $8.9 million came out of those beginning fund balances. So you wouldn't go across and add all of those. You would add the first 5, and that would be your beginning fund balance. And then we moved money over to that capital projects fund. And so really, as Sheridan pointed out, if you look at that beginning balance there, we were $52.4 million. We ended with $56.7 million in the operating funds. Now, if you include the money that's still out there from the capital projects fund, we are at $60.1 million, $60,096,000. However, what's important to note about that, and I have that down on line 33, is we still have obligations for payments for construction projects from FY23 of about $2.3 million. So when you factor that in, if you wanted to get an accurate look at where we think our fund balance is going to be for the year, you take that $60,096,000, subtract the $2.3 million from there, and you'd be in the ballpark of about $57.7 million. So I think ultimately that's where we're going to be. Now that assumes also that we spend all of that money as well. And so we'll finish up paying out those construction projects. And then, like I said, we'll have, when that's all said and done, we'll have a real clear picture of what the actual fund balance was. But again, I'm kind of using some accrual accounting here as well, as we're looking at saying, look, we've obligated these construction projects. They're being paid for out of fund balance. So if you look at that $60.1 million, yes, that's here now, but we still have another $2.3 million of obligation to those projects from last summer that's going to get paid out in this current year in the FY24 fiscal year. So hopefully that kind of makes sense to everybody.
So that 2.3 million you're talking about for the summer projects is not reflected here yet?
It is not. It's in the FY24 budget.
Okay.
But again, I'm looking at that a little differently because we're paying for that with the fund balance, not with the operating expense that we have in the past. So that's why if you see the $60 million, that's not really it's a true number of what we have, but there's still obligations against that. And the $56.6 million is probably a little low because I don't think that we'll spend all of that money in the capital projects fund, but we'll have to reconcile that when we're done. But if you took the snapshot on June 30, that's what it is. Okay? So I think that, again, the district is in great financial shape. And I think we'll remain there going forward. And then what I will do is typically in March, I get this information. I wait until January when I receive the new CPI number, Consumer Price Index number for the levy. In February, I'll get that number probably in mid-January. I will then put together another 5-year forecast for the district, and then we'll look at that probably in March, which is typically when we do that, when we have all of this data and all this information ready to go. I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of this for you as well.
I don't think any questions.
Appreciate it.
I don't know that I could formulate a question, but thank you.
Sure.
But again, just congratulations, thank you. It's great news every year, and it's critical great news. So we're very appreciative to your leadership and to everybody else that make this possible, because this is how we can do all the great things. Yeah. So
I mean, I was just going to say, I don't think I could formulate a question because it's so high level, but my takeaway from this is just that great job.
Thank you.
I mean, with the, seeing the big picture that I could grasp, here is really impressive, because this is obviously so detailed that, it takes a lot of skill, and I appreciate you.
Sure.
And your team.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, look, there's a lot of numbers here. I get it. But I think it's the best summary. And I use this for the budget, too, the same thing, right? So that it's consistent. You can see what the budget looks like and then what the actual looks like, which I think is important to do.
Very detailed. And very detailed, yet very big pictures. So great balance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
all right.
And then at the December 18th meeting, we will have the final, which, again, I don't think much is going to change in the way of the financial piece here. We'll wrap up the wording in the MD&A. You'll have the final for December, and then we will ask the board to vote to accept the financial statements as presented at the December 18th meeting. This is December now, the December 18th.
Yep. Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Brian.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Okay, our next agenda item is a facilities project update, and we're going to go right back to you, Director Brian Stachek.
I'm going to jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
for
Thank you,
Brian
Sheridan.
and the team. Thank you,
Thank you.
Sheridan. Before they get started, I just want to say, tonight is really the next important discussion, important step in this long-term journey of getting towards our summer 24 and 25 bond sale projects. The seeds of this were really planted in the spring of 2022, so almost going on 2 years ago now, when we started thinking internally about getting feedback and all the different processes we're going to put in place to really identify the upcoming projects. And that led to, over a year ago now, in September of 2023, a survey and a series of focus groups throughout the fall and into the winter that combined with a mechanical assessment that DLA completed in 2019, as well as all the feedback from the community, from our staff, from our students, really led to that February board discussion with the 500-page binder of really the current reality of our facilities. And so obviously that meeting was really important because we identified some priorities, some very kind of big picture priorities of our facilities, and got consensus from the board to have DLA come back with some concept design. So based upon that February discussion, throughout last spring, our architects spent a lot of time with our staff and our students throughout the spring leading up to June to really bring back some concepts and designs for some of the projects that are included in this overall plan. Since that June meeting, it's been more drilling down, right? Drilling down to more detail, more specificity, with the focus primarily being on the South Campus cafeteria collaboration space project, and then also the South Campus music project as well, which is what they're going to talk about tonight. And I can't thank, Brian has been intimately, obviously leading this, but our architects, Jen Tyrell's been involved in this, Greg Gardner, who's here tonight as well, has been involved in this, a lot of our music staff. I'll also throw a plug out to Jerry James, our Fine Arts Division Chair, who's been at every meeting and giving really valuable input, going on site visits, things like that, to really help us drill down on these projects. And so again, tonight's just the next step in this discussion and kind of where we're going. So we have Ed Wright and John Morowski, Heather Jewell, and Paul Guida here from DLA who are going to kind of lead us through this. So Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
I think that's about it. I think we can actually turn it over to DLA at this point, because I think that about covers the intro for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Brian's. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. You did introduce everyone, but John Morowski here, this is a new face with the team, so I thought I'd introduce him. The amount of work that we're going to be talking about today, we felt it was necessary to bring on another senior leader on the team there to kind of make sure we're keeping on top of everything. So John's an associate principal at DLA, and it's been very valuable to the team. So it's been probably about 3 months or so, give or take, since the last time we've been here. It's been very busy on our end. As Brian mentioned, we've been doing a lot of tours. We've been meeting with a lot of leadership and stakeholders. For the past month, we've been meeting weekly, kind of really developing and getting into the details of the plan. So we're going to share a few things with you today. We're going to share the updated drawings and how they've been developed. We have some renderings and some images of what these things could look like. We're going to have some updated budgets, updated schedule. Obviously, we know we've had some discussions around sustainability and accessibility, so we're going to give you guys a little bit of the highlights of some of the things we're doing with regards to that, and then also just kind of an update on where we are with some of the air conditioning and what that's going to go towards that long-term goal that you guys have also, or short-term, I guess. Yes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather to talk about the fun stuff, and then I'll come back and talk about the more difficult stuff.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Excited today to share where we are. It's not, the concepts have not dramatically changed, but I'm going to just go over them again just so everyone knows, kind of what's going on with the building. The first page here is kind of a master plan of the South Campus cafeteria. So we're actually taking that and moving that over to the area in kind of a peach color. So that's an addition that's going in the courtyard. And that area in gray is going to become new music spaces. So that's band, orchestra, and some practice rooms, as well as some classrooms, which you'll see later. And then the cafeteria is being added in the courtyard with some kitchen components going into what used to be the music spaces. This location is important because if you aren't aware, this is where the students are dropped off. And so it becomes a before and after school commons component as well as a cafeteria, so it will be used all day. Moving on. You can see that this is going to be a 2-story component, so it's going to connect to the second floor as well. You can see that in the context. And then moving on to the actual floor plan. So we'll go into this a little bit more detail. Actually, up a little bit. This is the second floor.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So what you see here is the new cafeteria addition. You see kind of a preliminary furniture layout to kind of show you where students are eating. One of the really big things that we were trying to achieve with this addition and renovated kitchen is right now we know the students have to wait in line a long time to get lunch. And so this introduces a whole bunch of new concepts that allow, lines to move through really quickly. It allows multiple different serving points and multiple different types of service. So we have a market component where students can go in and grab salads and things like that. We have a cafe component under the stair that will be available before and after school, so they can, they don't have to walk off campus to get snacks. And then we have, multiple different components within kind of the serving area itself that will help facilitate that. And then health was another big emphasis. So putting together, concepts that encourage students to make healthy choices. We have a new staff lounge area up in the northeast corner of the plan there. That won't just be for staff to eat. That will also be a co-working space, so it's kind of a reimagined concept of staff lounge space. It will have a mother's room as part of it. There's a new loading dock component, which was necessary to get all the food items into the building. And you can see the learning stair. It's also called a gathering stair component. And then outdoor dining, and then you'll start to see, we'll talk about it a little bit more later, the renovated. So that's also a part of the project. And just one last thing, there's some new, brand new toilet rooms adjacent, and then some new multi-user toilet rooms, or all-user toilet rooms as well incorporated. Moving up into the second floor, this is what we're calling the commons component and the drop-in center. So this is where students come during lunch to receive additional assistance. It also functions as that before and after school component where they can kind of hang out. There's going to be some soft seating up there. The gathering stair can be used for presentation, so there will be a presentation component to it, but also just for students to hang out on, just to give them a place to go. There's some small group rooms as part of this incorporated, as well as, I should have mentioned on the first floor, there is an elevator by this entrance as well. And moving on, we've got a few different renderings showing what this looks like. We focused a lot on getting a lot of natural daylight in there, a lot of natural warm components. We're thinking about health and wellness. We're thinking about how students feel when they're in the space. So we've got some wood components. We've incorporated some of the blue, your school color blue in there. And we've got a little bit of branding going on in on the opposite wall from this rendering, if you want to move on to that one. You can kind of see it through the window there. This is actually looking from upstairs. We're in the drop-in center, kind of looking out, so there's a great view out that way. And then,
So what's the current seating of the cafeteria?
right now, we're targeting, we assume there's about 500 students per lunch period, but we can see a little more than that, so like 525, 535.
Okay, so we won't be losing any, we won't be losing any space, we'll be...
No, there will be, there's more space actually than previously.
And you were talking about the serving stations, like currently, how many do we have compared to where we're planning to be with this?
I don't know off the top of my head how many point of sales there are, but I think they've added 2 or 3 point of sale components.
Part of it is the flow from how they actually work. So,
Right.
You have 1 or 2 point of sales, and then there's a long line, and they queue, and it takes forever to get through. Now we have multiple locations, so kids can come in at different spots, and it just circulates them through faster.
Like different stations, like different types of food? At
Yes,
different areas?
all of those
Okay.
components. So if you want to do a grab and go and something quick, you go over here. If you want to get the hot meal, you go here. And so it allows you to kind of diversify where they're going to speed it up.
Like right now, South Campus goes through one line versus North
Right.
Campus, there's
Right.
many lines. Because there's options.
This is probably for future, for later, but I just, will that change how we staff?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
And we've been working alongside Sodexo, who does your food service, as we're planning this, to get their feedback and input on some of the things that they need to help move this along quicker.
I have a question in terms of, you mentioned the different options, the point of sales. I'm imagining, okay, somebody gets a hot food item, somebody gets cold, whatever, grab and go. But then how many cashiers, right now, how many cashiers are there? And how many does this plan include? Because they have to pay, right? So
Right.
they have to
I believe we're at
enter that.
5 in this one, incling the area underneath the stair.
So this is...
That's correct.
That's the
Yeah.
future? 5?
Yes.
5. And right now, where are we at?
Right now, here we have 4.
We have 4.
We have 2, sorry to jump in, We have two, one in each cafe. So right now we separate it for freshman cafe, sophomore cafe. We have one in each line that's there. We have a third that's available, but then with staffing, sometimes that's shut down. So generally we're 2 to 3.
Okay, and we're moving to
5. Yes.
And will it also be 2 freshmen, 2 sophomore, and then 1 extra?
It'll all be in one space.
Space. So it doesn't matter if freshman, sophomore, you can go on.
Exactly. Everyone comes together into this one cafeteria space.
That's nice.
And another member of the team that's not here is one of our consultants. It's Rutano Food Consulting. That this is what they do, is design kitchens. They look at how quickly people get through lines, how long they queue. They have a whole bunch of data and metrics behind how they set these up. So we feel really confident in that, but that's certainly something we could have come in and talk, really get into the details if you wanted to hear from them as to how that works.
No,
a little beyond us.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But you did say you talk with Sodexo on what their needs are in those, and I would assume even if we stay with Sodexo or go to Airmark or whomever we're with, the same kind of conversations that you would be having with any of the providers, just to get overall general ideas on what they would be needing. Okay.
Yeah. The bigger components aren't going to change from one to the other. You're going to need a freezer, you're going to need a cooler, you know. It'll be more conversation on the types of stuff maybe they're serving, but the points of sale and all that, that's going to be the same with everybody. Yes.
So I know that there was we had a student that came and spoke about the lunchroom and everything, about how the long lines were there. So I'm curious to see what they recommended for the improvement changes with the plan, aside from additional cashiers and that kind of thing.
I think that it would maybe warrant bringing them in here, Brian, or maybe we can get something from them, because they really look at the queuing and how all this works and the very particulars that I'm not going to be able to answer.
Yeah, because and thank you for that. But I think that would be really helpful, just so that we know that we are doing our due diligence to see if there's something they're like, well, in a dream you would have X, Y, and Z, and we don't have this, and maybe it's something we would want to incorporate. I just feel like knowing that this is a hurdle and has been, and to offer that much more, I think would be great to kind of see specifically.
That's been part of the feedback, is having a cafeteria consultant, not connected to any company, not connected to Sodexo, not just a best practice cafeteria consultant. That they've already been a part of some of the meetings this fall, and they're going to continue to be a part of it.
And I'm just curious. Maybe they don't need to come in, and you can just get a summary from it. But I'm just curious to see.
I'm sure they can do that. They have that stuff readily available.
Just to see what it is, and are we doing the most that we can? Because this is the time.
Absolutely.
Where it might not be. Maybe it's not a small change, or it's something else that we.
What you'll sorry to jump in.
Oh, yeah.
What you'll notice now is when you go into the cafeteria, you're walking inside to purchase your food, and it's really like one lane. And so you get in, you see your food, you're picking what you want, and then the point of sale is not too far off from where you're choosing your entree item. And so with the new drawings with the consultant, when they came in, is they have multiple ways for you to enter in to purchase food, and there's more space to get into that spot where you're looking at entree options. And then when you're turning around, your point of sale is kind of more central to the exit, and so you're getting into the purchasing area earlier so that you can see options, you can make your order, you can see what you're choosing, and you're not being held up by the point of sale, which is something that we struggle with right now at South Campus. Is the point of sale is so close to where you're entering the line that it's a slow process. So you can see in the designs here that there are multiple entrances to get access to sort of where they're providing food entree options, and then a quick turnaround to the point of sale.
And I guess I'm just thinking, when you go to the United Center, for example, or even to Wrigley Field or something, and you go in and you get your food, and then you put it on a tray, it scans it. They've even cut the people out. Right. That has made it. So I just want to make sure that we're thinking ahead, where we're incorporating that kind of technology into it, which might be, from a cafeteria standpoint, 5 years in the future, but clearly it's working well for large control.
And these are definitely conversations we've been having. This company actually does some of those facilities, so we've had those talks. Some of it may result in operational changes for you guys and those types of things, but it's probably worth bringing them in to share some of that, or at least getting high-level summary of those options. But
and that could be a million more. I don't know, but it just seems like they're moving crowds through really quick, and then I don't even know how it all works. You go to that Amazon store and you're like, how do they even know what I have? And then you leave and you're like, 2 minutes later, you've got your charge and you're good to go. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it works like magic, but I mean, if we could maybe do something like that, that could be.
Well, ultimately, because what we're doing is giving them back the amount of time that the students need to actually enjoy, get that break, or
Right.
study, do what they need to do to be effective for the day instead of being frustrated and then having to shove something quick in their mouth in like 2 minutes, but then the bell rings and then go somewhere else.
And that's been central to the discussion, right? Increasing not just options based on the setup, but also the points of sale so that we can move students quickly through those points of sale and they can enjoy their lunch in this beautiful space. So we've had a lot of those discussions, and I would just add, we've specifically asked, Sodexo's been at the table providing feedback, but we've specifically asked, from their work with other food service companies and schools that have their own companies, are they seeing anything outside the box that they're not necessarily presenting to us? And they're sharing, Rotano's sharing with us that these are the recommendations that they've seen based on really all of the schools that they've worked on. So we've asked those questions specifically as well, and had good conversations with them.
I'm curious to see when you've asked those questions, what have they said about what do you call it? Like this personless checkout or something? I mean, I don't know, like the automatic checkout, I don't know what you call it, but.
Yeah, I don't know what schools are implementing that.
Just because a school's not implementing it, I guess is what I'm saying. I want to think outside of the box to say that to me probably would be outside the box, because what schools redone their cafeteria to have that technology to be able to do that? Where you think you put a tray down, can we implement that and have they even, maybe that's not something the school's done, so they haven't maybe brought it up.
And we've talked about that related to the staff space, but we haven't necessarily engaged in a lot of conversations about that within the student space.
We'll come back with some high-level feedback on that and give you guys some thoughts.
Okay.
From them.
Thank you.
I think it's absolutely worth asking. And this is, like you said, the time.
Because we're still, when you think about it being implemented, I mean, technology is moving so quick. Now I'm really dating myself, but by saying that statement, but it's moving, in 2 years, what we can imagine, when this is completed, or, do you know what I'm saying, and fully implemented, or that kind of thing, that might be more standard, and they might have better capability to do that. So maybe even if we can't implement it right away when it started, that you have that capability to implement an automatic checkout, which might be a little bit different.
Yeah, completely.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
One question about the drop-in centers the drop-in center that I see on the second floor for 60 people. Where is that space existing right now?
So currently at each of our campuses, we have different drop-in centers for each of our core content areas and also world languages. And that's feedback that we consistently get from kids, is that it presents a little bit of confusion, right? Math drop-ins in B200 and science drop-ins in a different location, English. So it's really scattered throughout both of our campuses. So there's a desire from our students to consolidate that drop-in center into one space. We think we should be able to, with a max of about 60, being able to attend at any given time. We feel like we should be able to support kind of a collective drop-in center, collaborative drop-in center. But there's also some options of using some overflow spaces as well. But really, students have expressed throughout the last couple of years a desire to bring the drop-ins together. Then if you're a student and you need to get a little bit of social studies help and want to pursue, getting some feedback on an English paper, you don't have to, travel to a different location or wait to another day. Everything's right there.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking of it from the standpoint of multiple people and just general noise and general distraction, and are we prepared for certain subjects that might, where if it's not working, that we still have places that are more quiet, because these drop-in centers are not, if I'm thinking about it properly, they're not just facilitated by students, but they actually, by teachers, but they also have students.
Combination. Some of them are staff supporting students' learning needs, and some are student tutors doing that. The drop-in center is closed off upstairs, and then the common space is open. So we feel like that gives us kind of the best of both worlds. We have a closed off space that'll provide a little bit of a sound barrier for learning to occur. Students students are close to, more often than not, students are attending during their study hall. So having that close to the cafeteria is really a benefit in terms of student movement. And then the opposite side is kind of an open commons area.
Okay.
And within that drop-in center, there also is a series
Breakout.
of 3 breakout rooms that can do smaller groups. So
Okay.
if you have to get even more isolated, you're able to do that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I have another question about on the back of the drawing, the one with the bathrooms, like that's by the break-in center. So so you're adding the bathrooms up there, correct? Like this one, I don't know if you have it on my.
On the second floor.
Yes.
No, we don't.
Those are existing on the second floor, where those are being renovated as part of it.
Okay, so is there a way when I know like from looking at the diversity and inclusion aspect of it, I saw down below on the first floor you had single toilets, single stalls, like bathrooms. Would there be a way that you could incorporate one up here on the second floor?
You can certainly look at it. We hadn't considered one up there, but that's something we can check into. We'll just have to find the space to.
I mean, I don't know, like, I'm not really good with spatial relation, but can you make that work? Because I don't know what those things are in the back. Like,
Those are the ADA accessible stalls in the back of it.
But is there a toilet in them?
Yeah.
Oh, because when I'm looking at it, I don't see, that's what I'm not really understanding.
Make sure I'm looking at the same.
So like, if on my computer screen, if that's.
Do you mind if I walk over?
Yeah, come on. Sorry, I'm not really sure I understand it, so that's why I was like.
Oh, the toilet's not showing up. There's supposed to be toilets in there. Sometimes our
Okay.
software, those things disappear.
Okay, because I was like, okay, if that's wasted space.
Yeah, no, those are definitely the ADA accessible stalls. So
Okay, so it's not wasted space.
No,
to turn that.
not at all.
Okay, that's
Are
what.
you guys looking at that first floor? Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's on the second.
Are you on page 120?
I don't know. Yeah, 120. That would be helpful. I guess I could have looked at the page instead of showing my computer.
Oh, sure.
Brian.
And those are existing?
The toilet's not showing, that's all.
Well, I just thought maybe it was like blank space. Okay.
The other way.
Was it back?
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to make it complicated.
That one.
Right there? Is that the one?
That's 119 there. Mine says
The toilets
120.
aren't showing
Yeah,
up
his
in
page
the-
numbers are
on the
different,
drawing,
Joe.
that's all.
So that's it. So
Like right there.
Right there.
Talking about right here?
Yeah, there's no, like, I didn't know what that blank space was.
Gotcha. Right here where the washroom.
So Heather, that's the second floor restroom that Brian was
Correct,
just
yes.
So, but is the question then, do we have single-use bathrooms on either floor?
We have them on the first floor, weren't there 3?
Yeah, we added
Okay.
several on the first floor.
Right, so, but I didn't know, because I was thinking that was wasted space, like non-usable space. I'm like, they don't need to hang out.
Right.
We don't need to give them a lounge in the bathroom. Okay.
But if there's interest in that, we can see if there's some space that we can capture on the second floor. We're trying to keep things pretty efficient at the moment, obviously, when we start talking about budgets in a moment. So that we can look at it.
Do we have single-use bathroom on the second floor?
We do on the end
We
of
do.
C hallway, Jen, is that right? Or Greg, can you help us out with that? Single user restrooms at South Campus on the second floor?
floor?
Right now, we're outside the library. So none on the second floor, yeah.
Oh, gosh, I thought that there was.
But, I mean, I don't know what the laws are about it, but like, if you were having those back spaces be ADA, could you have a single-use stall that was also ADA so that it had multi-purposes to use? So then you took,
Still need to make the other multi-user have an ADA stall.
so any multi-user bathroom has to have an ADA stall?
And generally,
Okay.
those generally take up the space of 2 regular stalls.
So you couldn't remove them from both the bathrooms and have one
Then I'd have
individual?
to basically lose another
Got it, okay.
stall in the other bathroom to do that.
Isn't that kind of the reason why we're going from 2 single-use restrooms by the library to 1? Because we want to make it accessible.
Correct.
So it's going to be one big thing, so we're losing one, but it's going to be way nicer.
And that becomes the real challenge spatially when we do this, is not only are we trying to make it single user, the single user bathrooms get very big, right, for one person, because you have to be able to get a wheelchair in and do your turn radiuses and everything
So every
else.
single-use bathroom has to be ADA accessible?
Correct.
Even if there's like 3 in a row? Okay, so, but I was looking at, hold on, I don't know.
Now, you might have some that are in your building right now that are not, because they're grandfathered in, but as soon as we touch them, we have to do it.
All right, so now, I'm sorry to go back to the page before.
This one here?
Yeah, that one, 118 for you. Wait, no. It's the one with like the bottom.
Right there.
Right there.
It's right there.
Okay, so when you're looking at the single.
Yeah, my computer's just
Sorry.
a little slow. This is the one you want right here, right?
Yeah, so if you can blow up the bathroom area.
Oh, I want to do that.
See how those are like?
It take a while.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want me to blow it?
No, it's fine. Here it comes.
There we go.
Which
Okay.
one? You're looking at the ones at the top up
The
here?
one that's at the top, because like 2 of them are smaller, 1 of them is bigger. That's why I thought maybe you could have like the one, they don't all seem to be the same size.
One of the ones, 80 storage. Yeah, one of them's storage, but the other one is just, it's a bit larger by nature of the footprint that we're in.
Okay, so I thought that was the ADA one.
Yeah, no, they all
versus
are,
the
they're
two
all
single.
ADA.
Okay, that was my,
There's just one, we're working within existing footprint, sometimes we have extra wall and get a little extra.
okay,
space.
that's why I just assumed the one on the right was the ADA, but got it.
That's the luxury one. It's 88
It's like the suite
Yes.
penthouse.
Put a couch in there.
Okay, got it, okay.
New term, it just made it ADA plus.
So thank you for humoring me, thank you.
So
Well, these are important things to ask, so I appreciate that.
the only other question, we were spending a little bit of time talking about the serving areas and those things. Will there eventually be renderings of what that will look like once
Yes.
they're actually in there? Okay.
Yep. We might have some today, but they're probably not as developed because we're still working out the
No, I
equipment and things. but-
don't need them, just curious.
Inside the serving area, but we certainly.
This thing just keeps jumping around everywhere. Holy smoke.
It's a big PDF.
I know.
Yeah, it's big.
I know, sorry.
Yeah, even when I was kind of going through it, it takes
Trying to zero in on one spot, and it just
Yeah.
keeps flying around.
Yeah, we do.
Oh,
Actually,
man.
if you go a little further, we do have an image of one of the areas, so it's the cafe under the
Saw that,
stair.
yep.
Yeah, saw
Which
that.
is one of the serving areas, so that's one of the ways that they're getting an additional point of sale.
That's actually the picture that made me think I want to see the other one too.
Yeah.
No, we'll definitely have that as we.
We have so many
develop.
demands.
That was great.
Brian, if you do want to go to the previous one, just to
Yeah.
do a highlight there, though, just.
Right here?
Yeah, pointing out, this is basically on that learning stair. So right now, you're not seeing it, but there would be a projection screen that would come down, so you could actually give lectures and use that as another presentation space, which you don't have many of. But then you can see down below, there's opportunities to bring in some monitors, and you could do some smaller activities down there, with a small group and connect to a monitor and do little different activities on that section. So a lot of opportunities to deliver education in there, in addition to just having it being a serving space.
Group guidance, discipline, deans, meetings, all those kinds of things.
It's excellent.
All right, we keep.
Tell me where you'd like to go
keep
next.
scrolling. You can go to the next one, Brian.
Okay, you want to stop here for a second? or-
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure. So as we talked about, this is an additional, place where lunch could be served. But it's also set up to function like a coffee shop or something like that before and after school. Snacks could be sold there. I think there's a plan to sell spiritware there. It's just kind of a nice, make students feel a little bit more like adults, give them, something a little unique in their space.
Something we haven't really gotten into here, but things we've seen other districts do with this is often kids will run these things at times, if they're selling the spiritware, that kind of thing, not necessarily doing food service, but they're able to actually do those parts out of those types of spaces, so it's something that you could think about down the road.
So I do have another question, I'm sorry, they're gonna kill me. So for the colors, is that final, or is
No,
that?
no.
Oh, because I was like, I'd like to see some yellow, maybe, that was my only, there's different shades of blue.
Yep.
That was okay. I don't know how, progressed we were. Okay.
Tell me, I'm
There will be color, we're not certain what the
Just
color.
like you said yellow, I don't know, we have two colors.
Maybe too
right.
circusy, please.
Yeah, we do want
I mean,
to make sure we're not going
Too much
overboard
blue
with
and
that,
gold.
obviously.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Just maybe a little
that's
yellow.
another.
I will mention, you can't see here, but there's actually a little yellow
the
on the
wood
floor.
panels gives a
I
little
just
yellow
was
look though?
Gold on the floor.
Yeah,
A little bit, but I just was like,
No, I agree.
I like that. I think that's a nice natural touch.
Yeah.
beautiful.
We'll scroll
I
to
see
the
the
next one,
yellow
Brian.
now, it's popping.
I'll do my best.
I missed it. I don't know
So
how.
here is an image of one of the toilet rooms. They're all being renovated, but this is just an example of some of the finishes that will be in there. I know it's a huge change from what they are now, but, we wanted to make them, not awful spaces to be in. So we paid a lot of attention to making these feel like really welcoming spaces.
And the faucets are all going to be sensor faucets? No.
Yeah, so that was a conversation we were having before. You've had sort of the gang faucets in there. Brad can attest to this. They're extremely difficult to deal with. They don't make they change parts all the time. They update models. They're just a real nightmare for his team. So going to a more standard sink in there is kind of what we're thinking. We'll talk a little bit about this in the sustainability piece, but they'll have the automatic faucets and all that, so you're not just turning water on and wasting it. But the single bowls seem to work better from a maintenance standpoint.
Okay.
All right, so moving on.
My only comment is, and I think it looks lovely, and I think it's really sophisticated, and it's a nice, clean design. And it's just hard to tell from a rendering, but just the light. I just remembered that there was comments that people have made before about the bathrooms feeling really dark.
Bright. Yeah.
So just, it's hard to tell, because it kind of has that nice mood lighting, which feels great.
It'll definitely have appropriate lighting.
Yeah.
And again, the software sometimes is limited in how these things come out when we do the images here, but we're certainly sensitive to make sure they're well lit.
Yeah, and I guess those can even be censored probably too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's kind of all required these days.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
We're demanding a lot of these renderings, so thank you.
We run the risk, and we're not fully 100% developed with them, that we know that there's going to be some shortcomings, but we still want to show you where we're at. So.
Yep.
Great. All right, moving on to the music area.
One thing I do want to mention about music is there was a series of tours to other facilities with the music department to kind of look at what's out there, what things are working for other districts, what things aren't working so great. So getting a lot of feedback and a lot of back and forth to kind of get this to where it is. But we feel really happy about where it's landing. I know your music department's very excited about it.
All right, so there's three main spaces. There's band, choral, and orchestra, the same as you have now. They are all larger than the spaces are now, appropriately sized, and we have been working with the acoustical engineer to make sure that there's the appropriate acoustical separation between them. We know that's an issue that you have now. We've got a lot more space for storage. There's been a percussion room added for drumline practice and percussion practice. Additional practice rooms, choral and orchestra office, band office, an ensemble room, which was not previously the band or the music area didn't have an ensemble room. And then you see off to the right, there's these three spaces labeled flex, and they have a room divider that can either divide them into three classroom-sized spaces, or they can all be opened up into one large flexible space that can have multiple purposes, through use throughout the day.
That's something that previously identified in both your buildings that's severely lacking are these areas to have some larger group meetings and that sort of thing, and have that flexibility to go in and just grab two classes or get together, that kind of piece. So this really starts to help service that need, and then also allows it to be a meeting space for staff and a lot of functions that can happen in there.
And then moving on, there's some renderings of the interior. These, we're still working with our acoustical engineer to get the appropriate amount. You see there's some kind of colored boxes on the wall. We'll make sure that there's an appropriate amount of acoustical absorption within the spaces. But this is how they're developing at the moment. This is the band room. Here, you can see there's some visibility into the practice rooms. We're making sure that all of the spaces are supervised at all times. So I'm going to move on to the next one.
Yeah, so go back to that band one. Brian, go back one. That's the one you're asking about, right?
Yeah, so while I see the rendering where the layout or whatever, however we want to describe this, the plan on the previous page, but if this is going to be shown like living elsewhere, can we get like something like more to the room to like make it look like it's a music room? Like, because right now, like, it doesn't, like.
You're saying like from a PR perspective?
Yeah, if
add
it's
some
living,
furniture,
if
add
this
some
is gonna
furniture in
live
there,
on
yeah.
something outside of
Yeah,
what we
for
are
sure.
seeing today, at some point, can it look like a little bit more realistic that this is a music room?
So, if, for instance, like maybe putting risers in there, showing kids with instruments, that sort of thing.
Or, yeah, not the
That
kids,
will
yeah, or
happen.
something like, or just a little bit, like, so that it's a little bit.
You mean that little staff board on the wall doesn't tell you it's music? No, we completely appreciate that. And that will be as these develop.
Yeah, I'm not like criticizing, I'm just like
no,
saying, like, if this is living outside of what we're looking at today, then it needs to have a little bit more dimension, just so that people can really get it.
Yep, for sure.
But it looks great.
Chairs and music stands.
The little big music
Yeah,
feature up at the front of the room.
Maybe some music notes on the wall?
Yes.
Well, that would help.
I think if you leave that up to us, it's not going to look very well, so we'll trust that you'll get it done. Based on the conversation I'm just hearing right
Well, like maybe even something above the thing, because there's a big blue space, that you put some wording, because you have like wording in the cafeteria or something. Maybe yellow. I'm kidding. Just totally kidding.
All right, moving on to the choral space. What you can't see about the band is that every single one of these spaces has daylighting in it. So that was really important. It's important. Daylighting is important even in music spaces, so we made sure that we got that. This is choral, which we'll get some choral risers in there. Every single one of these has a drinking fountain, a sink, and a little bit of casework just for cleaning instruments, drinking water for your voice, that sort of thing. And then moving on. This is a view of the exterior. So this is a pretty dramatic change to the existing cafeteria exterior. That's because these spaces are very high volume, so we actually had to pop the roof up and actually pop these volumes up and reclad them in something new. So this is the design for that. You can see those windows looking into the spaces.
So effectively, the footprint doesn't change. It's just the exterior walls now we have to build up a little bit further, and we're replacing a little bit more.
And that's a standard because of the amount of...
It's part of the height that we wanted. We're always planning on raising that to some degree, but as we got into it, we're actually ending up replacing a little bit more of the exterior wall to make it work.
So that's not, though, because of high volume, because the cafeteria obviously was high volume.
It needs a little bit more in there to serve as a proper music space.
Okay.
So is this on the side where where the music area used to be? This is now where the cafeteria.
Oh, this is where the cafeteria was. So would be where your that sort of outdoor courtyard area is, if you will.
So this is in the back.
Yeah,
Patio.
patio. So the Performing Arts Center is right down that path to the left.
Right on the fields or like beyond.
So the footprint remains the same, but will it all be, the existing part be demoed, or will we keep some of it and build onto it?
I'm sorry, Brian was distracting me.
Sorry, I apologize.
I'm supposed to be talking.
I'm just wondering, the footprints, you said it's going to stay the same, but is everything else going to be demoed and we're building new?
Basically, a
walls?
majority of the walls are coming down as we go up. Once we started getting the actual structure there, it needed to be done.
Thanks.
Because I thought we were moving it.
Can you go back to the drawing of the interior space where it shows all? Keep going.
We're just
Back to.
You want to go all the way to the, right here.
So, in the space where does the raised roof and the windows that we just saw, where is that on this
So
drawing?
it's in the top left corner there.
They're up here.
Right there.
Right there?
Yep.
Okay.
And over
and
here,
then also in
right?
the band.
Yeah, so if you were standing that top left and looking to the right, that would be looking towards the Performing Arts Center.
Okay.
That's where the cafeteria is.
That's the whole patio area on the top there.
Okay. I got it now. Thank you.
No, we only raised the areas over those large volume spaces, so the rest of it is still the low volume.
If you're familiar with the existing cafeteria, this is cafeteria, and this is the serving, like right in the middle here right now. So that's how it currently is configured.
And the stairs down to the basement, are those, I'm not familiar with those.
It's just an existing stair
An
down
existing
there.
staircase.
Yeah,
Is it-
there's a lower level with some mechanical equipment and storage that is just going to be remaining.
And it's closed off, I would imagine?
Yeah.
Okay.
glad you guys are raising the roof.
It's appropriate for a music space,
For
right?
sure. I imagine acoustics has a lot to do with that,
Yeah,
too.
it does. And it was something we were planning on. It was more, that we're having to do more with the exterior wall than we originally thought, but we had anticipated doing that. We're doing less of it than we thought as well. The center section is staying where it was. So again, trying to be efficient with what we're doing.
That's great.
Gives it some good dimension.
We had yellow on these walls, but we were directed not to do it, just so you know.
Blue and yellow.
Gold, wait, it's gold.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right, moving on.
That's going to be the two different tones.
Let's skip a page.
Basically, to get us some.
No, that's right.
No, that's good, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that came to light as we started to develop this cafeteria addition was the condition of the rest of the courtyard. So we realized we were affecting a lot of the courtyard that was there. And then the rest of it was actually in pretty poor shape and had some accessibility issues. So that's something that kind of triggered this redesign of the courtyard, that and the desire to have some educational space in addition to the outdoor dining. So we've redesigned this to make sure that every single door out of the school into the courtyard is accessible. And then we're connecting all the spaces, and then you see right in the middle, there's kind of a semicircle there. We're adding an outdoor learning component as well. And then the trees that are in the middle of the circle, that kind of what's driving that circle going around them is we're trying to save as many of those beautiful old trees as possible. So that's kind of creating the sort of the heart of the circle there of the courtyard. And if you move forward, we actually have some images of that courtyard as well.
Heather, can you go back to that, or Brian, go back to that?
Yep. Maybe.
That diagram. And can you just talk about the different patterns and what they represent, like grass versus concrete versus?
Yes, I can. And what you'll be able to see a little bit easier in the renderings, but the area.
So the light gray stuff, those are basically the sidewalks. So is it white gray, that.
So this is all sidewalk.
That's all concrete sidewalk.
That's all grass.
Those are trees. Those are the trees that are currently there. And then the darker stuff, that's probably more of sort of some native natural plantings that are low maintenance. Probably not too dissimilar from some of the stuff that went in front of this building when we did the exterior last year.
And then all those little things that look like hamburgers, those are little, that's outdoor dining.
These right here?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes.
Oh,
Where they can enjoy
hamburgers.
hamburgers.
That's a
I didn't
lot.
realize that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a placeholder. We really need to determine how you're going to use it, but there's an opportunity for a lot.
Is there really? Okay. Because is each one a table then with two sides?
Yes, each
For
table
seating?
fits 4 students.
Okay.
It's a big courtyard, right? It's
Yeah.
the biggest courtyard in South Campus. It's a
And
pretty
what
big
about,
space.
what about access in and out of the courtyard? Is it only through the cafeteria?
So you have it on the top left and the bottom left. So those are 2 areas right now where there's stairs coming down. So we're bringing those level. So again, they're accessible now. You can come out if you're in a wheelchair. And then the upper right and lower right are also 2 connection points off the hallway. And then the commons itself in the middle there you can access. So it's really about 6 points of access.
Great. And obviously, this is going to change or kind of have some considerations for how we monitor and our student assistants and,
Sure.
you know,
For sure.
different
Supervision.
different types of levels of supervision and all those. Okay.
The only question I had about this was, these are existing classrooms here, is that right?
Yes.
And then up
It's
there?
the B hallway.
Are we
And
gonna
then up
have-
there is the E hallway.
Are we going to have issues with kids hanging out there, potentially distracting from those classrooms? Is that going to be an issue?
I mean, it's the same setup we have here.
Just-
where
but
all
nobody's using it, right?
3 sides. No, they use it.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
We're
like,
gonna have
we have 3 sides with the classrooms right now, plus 3 floors that overlook the courtyard
Okay.
of the cafeteria here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure that'll be a, what do you call it? The first couple weeks,
Teens-
it'll be a
teens
novelty
meet?
and
Oh, no.
exciting, and
Yeah.
then
I
it's
mean,
just,
it exists now. I don't know how, you probably are not using it to this capacity, but there are probably students using it now.
They do here, yeah.
Yeah.
When it's warm, anyway.
Yeah.
We do have air conditioning now in many of that, so a lot of times the windows aren't open, so you'll be able to kind of quiet that type of noise during 4th and 5th, so.
That's really important point for during the construction too. Like if we hadn't done B wing last year, you'd have a whole 2 floors of B wing that would be no air conditioning, windows open with construction going on right outside. So that's significant.
So you can start to see that courtyard here, rendering of the exterior of the building. We're really trying hard to make it feel like it fits within the context of the existing building, thinking about brick colors and things like that, while making it a new space for these kids.
And to the right of that, all the way to the far right of the screen, that's all newly built up as well?
Correct. Yes, that's that link piece that connects to the second floor. So right above there's a ramp, and that's where that connection is made.
So where are the buses out that way? Or
Yes.
I'm confused.
Yeah, so that sidewalk would continue all the way through out to the parking lot, and that's where the buses would drop off.
So that's the doors to the G-Wing right now, right?
If you walked out those 2 doors on the right of the screen, you would head straight towards Garden Market. You'd head straight out those doors. The buses would be right there. Across the parking lot would be Garden Market.
Where they're going right now.
Yeah.
Is that where the
G-Wing.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Where that parking, like what did Julie always used to call it, like the range, the parking range? Is that where it is?
No, that's further back. That's back by Bennett Field. So if you walked out those 2 doors and you went left, you would run right into the pool.
Got it. So it's further closer to Willow Springs. Okay.
So that actually is the entry now where the buses come out, but it's a single-story piece, which when we go 2-story, we're going to have to knock it all down anyway, which also then gives us access to that courtyard to actually do the work that we're doing.
Right. So you are moving the cafeteria over that way, and then the music room is being moved where the cafeteria is now.
They're just swapping. Yeah.
Oh,
And I know that Heather mentioned it, like such a desirable feature of the movement is having the common space, the cafeteria, right off where our buses are. So to be able to have a space for our kids to go when they arrive to school and have a space for kids to wait for buses after school, like there's a safety component to that. There's a connectedness component. So we're really excited about what that does. And then one other comment about the patio, that'll be used when the weather's nice during 4th and 5th period for lunches, but we envision that, Heather talked about outdoor learning space. Now we have a space with seating that teachers can bring classes to, and like to have that seating and design instruction around that with the seating in mind is just a really positive thing, and we envision that it'll be used a ton by a lot of different classes when the weather is nice.
They'll be fighting for it.
So, this would all be completed like in a summer?
No.
Oh, okay.
We got a couple years of construction here.
But I mean, but it won't be during the school year because of the So how do they eat? Like, how is that? Like, that's where I guess.
We're talking about that.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's where I'm like, isn't it taking longer?
Jill, 10 years ago, we had to set up a temporary cafeteria in Bond Gym for a whole year.
Okay, because I'm like.
We're going to have to do the same thing at South Campus.
Okay, there was no talk about that. I'm like, this is very ambitious for the.
But
I was like, go for it.
Host a cafeteria every year. He's going to serve sandwiches from his desk.
I was like, okay. I thought I was missing something. I'm like, go get it.
That might be a good transition, I think, into might be the next slide here. So,
Yeah, the timelines and everything.
Oh, yeah, one more, then I'll get to that.
Just to zoom back to show the whole context of the courtyard.
It looks amazing. Yeah.
So excited about all this alignment.
Oh my gosh,
So
yeah.
excited. The love that South Campus.
Anyone work? You guys work freshman experience day as parents, serving pizza. That's where we would always do it there in that big courtyard.
Yeah.
So that's going to be better space for freshmen.
so nice.
And we still do it there. So,
Yeah, and I really appreciate you keeping the look of the building and tying it in, but updating it, and it looks, like it belongs there. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
Looks like it's always been
I
there.
don't want it to be a sore thumb.
yeah, no.
So the next one here is just kind of looking at what the schedule is. Obviously, with a lot more work that's been kind of brought in. We're pushing this out a little bit in addition to the scope here, all the O&M projects that we talked about at the last meeting, and there's a lot going on. So right now, a lot of this is for our internal use, so we're about 75% complete with the drawings as of today. Our goal is to be out to bid about the third week of January, so that's when we release the documents for bidding. That's an important date. Somewhere towards the end of February, whether it's the 16th or a little bit later, is when we're going to be receiving the bids. And then we'll take some time to evaluate those, vet them, make sure everything's good, and then we'll be coming back to a committee of the whole on March 4th to present those all to you for approval and consideration. So that's what that looks like. After that, then the idea would be that they may be breaking ground as early as April. So
Does that include permits?
Permits, yeah.
Everything?
Yeah, so the school permitting process is a lot different than the private sector. Effectively, we just take the drawings, we review them with the regional office of education, and we have our permit with that day. So it's not like when you have to go through the city of Chicago or something like that. It's one of the ways schools are able to actually do the construction in the short windows that they have, is we don't have these long permitting cycles. So.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that you mentioned that there's been a lot of field trips and site visits with LT staff in the music room, and to Jill's point earlier about like this is the time to figure out what's worked, what hasn't worked,
Yep.
and anticipate that. Were you able to get to Lake Zurich?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
For the cafeteria?
We actually have a new list of schools that have done recent cafeterias. Lake Zurich's on that list, right? But we
They
have
are.
Like
Yeah, I
10
think
or
we gave
12
about
others.
10 or
Actually,
so.
John sent that to us recently, so
Okay.
we'll get out to
Yeah,
say
it
more.
would just, for the same reasons, it's such an opportunity to look at those schools that have already accepted some of these models to say, if you could do it all over again, what are the 3 things you missed?
Yeah.
What's working really well, what's not, then let's consider them now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, now the fun stuff. All the accolades you were giving Brian in the previous section of tonight's meeting about how well he's been doing financially. This is so we can do this stuff. So it's an update on the budget. Just to give some context here. Some things that are included in here were stuff that was talked about at a previous meeting as far as some of the typical summer projects that we now assign the numbers to and put in here so you can understand the totality of what's going out. A few other things are just as we got into looking at the detail of the project, either there was some scope requests from staff and administration, hey, we should grab these single-user toilets over here, that makes some sense, or this roof, we're going to have to do this roof in the next few years. We might as well do it now while we're here, those types of things. So that's a lot of what we're looking at. I did up it a little bit just for what we're seeing with some of the construction costs right now from where I was budgeting before as well. We have our first batch of projects going out right now. I'm expecting some bids back in the next 2 weeks for some major addition projects that will help give us a better handle on where the market sits today. So I'm looking forward to seeing that data, I think. Hopefully it's not crazy, but then we'll let you know if we think this needs to be adjusted further or not. But as of today, this is where we sit. So just kind of walking through it. For the cafeteria commons area itself, we're looking at about 11.5 to 12.5, and some of the added scope in there that we're looking at. So the roof over the serving area, which is the current music wing, we weren't going to address that at first, or we didn't think about it as we started looking at the mechanical equipment and things that are going on there, the amount of penetrations and the age of the roof. It seems silly not to do it. While we're here, you're going to have to do it within the next 5 years or so anyway. It's on that list. That's a 91 vintage. So it made sense to add it. Those single-user toilets and mother room, that was something that we talked about afterwards and added into the scope. The cafe beneath the stairs, it adds you that extra point of sale to move things along, but some additional pieces to that. One of the things we're having to deal with is the detention issues, so that's stormwater, so we're going to have to do some things in the courtyard to address that. We were hoping we were going to be able to run it out to the north, where a section of the building goes now, but in conversations with the village and MWRD, we have to run west, west. That's no, south, sorry, south. Because that's the direction it flows currently. So that's how we're having to address that, is through some underground detention. And then looking at the needs of how we're getting stuff in there and how you guys get your food delivered. We're having to recess the dock area, so an actual fully loaded semi can go in there. Not something we were originally considering, so there's some added scope and cost for that. So those are the things that have gone into it. As we move on to the music and study hall area, that's about 6 to 6.5. The basic part that we looked at before was basically moving music over. As I mentioned, we're having to do a little bit more with that exterior wall than we originally planned. We were always going to raise the roof, but we thought we'd be able to salvage some of that, so there's a little added cost there. And then those 3 flex classrooms that were kind of bonus space, wasn't something we were originally planning on, but it makes a ton of sense, so that's part of that number as well. The interior and exterior doors, those were just some of the added summer O&M scope, so those are just part of the numbers now. Pool lighting and field house lighting, again, these are things you've seen before, but we're just bringing them into this document. The E-wing unit vents, so that's the west half of that cafeteria, the courtyard space, I mean. So the other wings are air conditioned. We're running through that section. We had talked about adding the unit vents in there and bringing it in. Once we got into the space there, every one of those rooms has 2 unit vents, which is unusual. But there's a little bit more money there than we never gave you a budget on that, but it was a little more than I was thinking before we got into it. But it's, again, in line with scope that you're already working towards. And if we don't do them now, you're probably going to want to do them the following year or the year after that. It makes sense to grab them while we're there. So that's $750,000 to $1 million. The courtyard piece, we talked about that. The condition it's in, I mean, we could leave it alone, but you're not going to get access to that thing again. The fact that we're in there right now, it makes sense to do it. And from the accessibility goals, it makes sense to do it now. So that's another piece of the scope that's come in for about $300,000 to $500,000. The toilet rooms, those have remained as they were. We're bidding those as an alternate. So, bids come back, that's something you can pull back and add into scope later. The Bennett Field ticket booths, that still remains as an alternate. So the total there, we're looking between 21.6 and 24.1-ish for all that work. And that's all going to be in one bid package. So we're bidding that out as its own thing. We'll have a separate bid package for the remaining D-wing roofs that we had talked about. So those are about 1 to 1.2. So that'll just go to roof bidders, so you're not paying any overhead with a general contractor on that. We also have Westfield listed in here. I don't believe that's going to go out this year. That was something that we were hoping to get out as we're having more conversations with the village around some shared detention and those types of things. It's going to take a little bit longer to coordinate that effort, and we don't want to rush it and then miss that opportunity. So that's probably going to be something for the following summer, or even one after that, depending on when you guys want to do it. But that won't be part of this summer's work. The other one is the air handler for the community room at this building that just needs to be replaced, so that's in there as well. So if we're looking at everything in totality that we'd be looking at, it's 25.8 to 28.9, but I would subtract that $3 million out of there for the Westfield, which I probably should have done ahead of this, but we wanted to leave it in there because it was presented to you previously.
So I know this is focused on South Campus, but when you originally came back with like some initial renderings, you had some renderings of some space at North Campus, like from...
That would be for next year.
Okay, so but that's not in this 25 to 28 million. Is that will be in another...
Brian, you want to talk about that?
Like when?
Brian.
Yeah, so when
that was part of the bond.
Correct. Yeah, initially it was, and there's no doubt from what we've talked about here tonight, the scope of this project has grown. When we look back, initially we didn't have the switching of the music wing and the cafeteria. Initially it was, here's the existing cafeteria, we'll renovate the existing cafeteria. And again, there's, as Ed said, there's about $3 million here of just general maintenance types of things that we have to do with the facilities as well. And so, what I'm looking at is right now, look, we're going to have about $26 million from the bond sale, okay? We had initially talked with the board, I think it was back in June?
Before that, I think it was almost a year ago now.
No, when we had talked about
the
using.
projects, June, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it was June when we
Oh,
talked
no,
about.
you're right. In June, we also built in the consideration of fund balance as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we talked about, potentially using, $10 million of district money at that time. And so that 10 million at this particular point is probably going to have to go to at least funding the projects here at North Campus. We'll also have to take a look at any additional dollars on top of that. Now, what I can tell you I'm looking at right now, first of all, is we saw the fund balances from today. And so, let's say we're in the $57 million range. I think we could comfortably use, 15 million, somewhere in that ballpark of those dollars as well. In addition to that, again, the regular maintenance projects that we have in here for right now, about $3 million. I'm going to pay for that we're going to pay that, use the bond sale money for that as well. And again, you may recall the reason that we're going to do that is because we have to spend those dollars within 3 years. And so we want to get rid of all of that money as quickly as we can. Now, what that does for us is then it alleviates expenditures coming out of the operating fund or the O&M fund for any of those maintenance projects. So whatever essentially money that we don't spend on those, we will accumulate in fund balance over the next year and potentially the following year, and that can then all be added to that additional money that we have sitting in our, let's call it $15 million, right? That's sitting in our fund balance right now, and we can utilize for those projects, for the projects here at North Campus. I don't have a great handle on that number yet, and it's going to be a little time before we do. One of the telling signs that we're going to start to see here, as Ed pointed out, is what these projects are coming back at from some of the other districts. And are we in the ballpark here in terms of the square foot, the cost per square foot, or are we low, are we high? What I can tell you is, I guess just, unfortunately, the bond sale, we're selling bonds at a time when interest rates were higher, and we're also going out to bid at a time in construction when construction costs are a little bit higher than what we've seen in the past. And so some of that is being reflected in here as well. And so what we'll do as we go forward, really a couple of things. We're going to receive those bids here in, what do we say, March, right? It's February. So we're going to review all that at that point, and then we're going to say, okay, how closely does this compare with what we think the budgets are, and where are we? Does it come in line with this $25.8 million to $28.9 million, right? We're going to look at that and say, where does that fall in line with this? We know how much money we have from the bond sale. We know that we have some money from, in the reserves, the fund balances, and so once we get that, we can really start to put the picture together a little bit better in terms of where we are. And then we'll have to look out even a little bit further, and that's where that sort of that 5-year forecast piece comes into play. When I put that together in March, we can start to see, okay, what additional dollars will we have that we wouldn't be using from the operating expenditures that we can now spend on North Campus. And that's why I'm kind of hoping that CPPRT number stays up, as high as it possibly can over the next few years. Don't forget too, we've also had 2 5% CPIs in a row on the levy, and I know that's obviously property taxes, but that money can also be used for anything that we're not spending out of the operating funds. That can also be spent on those renovations. So we're going to have to do some work. We're going to have to take a look at a little bit longer term here in terms of where we are. But that will essentially, I think we'll start to get some ideas from some of the other districts that are going out to bid now, and then when we actually get our bid specifications back, the pricing back, to actually look to see where we are, and are we falling in line with what we're seeing here, and then kind of move forward from there. Again, Ed points out at the bottom here that we also still have the architect fees that are not included in here, as well as any asbestos removal fees as well. So those are forthcoming. The asbestos fees will be forthcoming because we're going out to bid for those if there are asbestos removal issues that we need to address. And then, of course, we still have the architect fees in there also. So we're going to have to look at all of this, put it all together. But that won't happen today. That won't happen tomorrow. It's going to happen over the course of time. And then we'll figure out where we're going to go with the funding for North Campus.
When we approved the bid specifications for this, we approved bid specifications to be done for North Campus with what we looked at.
Right.
So are those still being done?
Yes. That'll be the focus when these bids come back, is rolling into that, to have those, so that project would start the following year.
Okay. So
This would all be summer of '24, and basically all the work that's happened since last spring on this project, the same thing would happen for the North Campus starting next spring into next fall, right? And to Michael's point, the big component of that is the approximately 64 classrooms on the west side of the campus, 3 floors, air conditioning, classroom modernization. That's the biggest piece of that project.
Yeah.
The West Field was also included, some accessibility projects within restrooms as well.
Let me just be clear, though. We won't have the bids, the cost for the bids side by side for north and south.
Right.
We won't have that to look at. So we'll have to, do some financial planning going forward.
Right, so, but you're saying though, but you're going to put that out for bid at a later time?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not at this exact time that the
Correct.
South Campus stuff is.
Correct.
So it's going to be
That's right.
a later timeline for
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think what Brian will have by March is some more financial information. Once we have the actual bids back and know what we're dealing with, we'll also have more 5-year financial projection to look at as well.
Correct. And we know we'll have the bond sale money at, roughly $26 million. So we know there's our starting point. And then what do we have from the operating funds, the fund balance reserves, that sort of thing? What can we utilize for that going forward?
Yeah, I think we were looking at, I'm going by memory, but weren't we looking at about $32 million originally?
I think that was the original.
But we were looking at south and north
Right.
at that time.
That's right.
So, and I guess I didn't realize that it was pulled off to the degree that it is.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's why I was asking.
There is
Right.
a chunk of this that is your normal O&M stuff that's in
Yeah.
here too.
Yeah.
So there's several million of that
Yeah.
as well.
Right. And we kind of put that in here because, again, as I said, I want the board to be aware that we are going to utilize those bond sale dollars. I'll account for all of it so that we know where the money has gone.
Right, of course.
But we want to utilize those dollars for any renovation projects we do, even our regular O&M projects, just to get it off the books and get it spent. That being said, those dollars that we don't use from the operating fund, we can use those at a later time.
What was the cost for the north classroom renovations? And we're talking about an elevator too, right?
We were.
What document was that in? Was that back in
I was just trying to look in the old board docs.
Was it
to see.
February?
March? I was thinking something like
I
that.
thought we were around 15. I thought, somewhere in that
To do
ballpark.
that section.
Was it June?
Yeah.
Was it June? When we looked at those, no?
No, I thought it was earlier than that.
Yeah, I can't tell when. Yeah.
But I think it would be nice to kind of have a sense of what that other number is floating out there as we're talking about
sure.
this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the asbestos abatement, that could be, probably will be an issue, assuming the age of the building, is that incorporated into, is that mitigated in your schedule?
That will be part of the schedule. So the district has an environmental consultant that they work with on that. So they're currently doing the evaluation and the testing and putting together their bid specs to what that is. As we get closer to bidding, we'll account for, okay, they need 2 weeks here. We'll build that into our schedule so the general contractor knows they need to allow 2 weeks for them to do their part. But they'll be two separate things.
Because it does look aggressive, right? I mean, so how confident are you in the schedule as it is?
We're fairly confident. I don't think the abatement's going to take more than a week or two. Generally, that's about what we've been looking at with what we've been doing. We have spent a lot of time talking with some contractors that we have good relationships as we build out the schedule. So at this moment, we feel pretty confident in it. Now I can't speak to, an air handler all of a sudden is stuck overseas and we can't get it here. Some of the material delays that we've seen over the past few years, they've gotten a lot better. So that'd be my only caveat there, is if something like that takes place. But as we're talking now, we feel pretty good about it.
And, I mean, just because there could be things outside of the control, what mitigating, items are in place just to, to work around? Like if the schedule's busted and, the air handler units don't
Right,
here,
right.
or,
So I guess one of the things is we're going to be basically flying the plane while we're building it in some regards in terms of how you guys are operating as a district. You're going to be doing your lunch in the gym area, your music's made alternative plans. If for whatever reason we can't get into these spaces, that they would probably continue in that fashion. The way we're staggering, well, actually we're not staggering it the same way as we originally thought, but I don't anticipate that if there were a delay, it would be all of it. It would be music might be turned over, maybe the cafeteria is dragging a little bit, or vice versa. So I don't think you'd be fully in that scenario if anything was delayed. But based on like when the school year is going to start and when we think these are going to finish, I do feel comfortable with where we are.
And Ed, to that point too, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the construction of the new cafeteria outside in the courtyard can actually start, and there won't be any asbestos abatement with that
and
portion.
that's why we're trying to take advantage of that April
So
start date.
that can actually start right away.
Okay.
And start moving from there. There won't be any asbestos abatement out in the courtyard, thankfully.
Okay.
Yeah.
I found it. The original cost projection back in February for the classroom modernization, which included air conditioning, was 8.5 to 10.
At North?
At North. That was 64 classrooms of air handling units, cooling, and modernization upgrades for the classroom portion. And then
I think there was a few other components to that, probably the toilet room component, and a little bit of other work.
Separate. So just the air handling units in the classrooms were 8.5 to 10. The upgrading the existing elevator was $500,000. Toilet room stack at both 3 and 4 was $1.5 million. So 10-ish.
Right, yeah, that 15, Brian, was including Westfield.
That was including Westfield. Yeah, right. Okay.
Right.
Which we already have in here on this document.
Correct.
So simpler math says that North, we're looking at 10 to 15 million worth of projects in North Campus. Although that was 9 months old, so we know the cost projections will have to be updated for that too. But we'll learn a lot more when we take these out to bid.
And that was going to be my question too, if you can refresh my memory. I know we always have the variance for change orders and things like that happen, but if we get bid specifications in and people are selected for bids, do they stick to what they said it was, right?
Correct.
These are long haul projects.
Correct. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons we're talking about what we're talking about and moving music and the cafeteria simultaneously. Where I was going with the phasing before is we were originally thinking we're going to keep one of those areas alive while we do the other. So keep you in your current cafeteria until the other one's built. And then when that's done, jump over the year later and do music. The contractors we were talking to is like, well, we have to hold our bids for 2+ years now to do that. And we're going to protect ourselves, and we're going to put anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million onto that to protect ourselves. So by doing it all at the same time, we're really looking at 1.5 years of construction, and that's they have to hold their bids to that. So we're not going to look at that premium.
And have you had other districts that have done similar for those reasons?
Oh yeah. 18-month projects for additions of this size are pretty common, so that's kind of a normal thing. When we start getting into 2+ years, that's where it gets a little hairy.
So anything that we would do at North would not happen until summer of 2025 earliest?
That would be I think the earliest.
Earliest. Okay.
Thank you.
That one's going to be, I think, a little more difficult.
There's more to it.
There's more
which is one of the
logistics with
reasons
that.
We kind of went the way we did, is to have more time to do the investigation on this building, because obviously it's older, there's a little more challenge to it. And there's obviously such a thing as construction fatigue, to have everything going on at all your buildings at one time.
Yeah.
And you guys will never want to see me again.
Well, and I think it's easier to take a cafeteria and a music room out of service than it is actual classrooms. Those are different ballgame there, so we'll have to have a plan for all of that at some point too, which
we can't go without 64 classrooms.
No, that won't work, so.
Okay.
It's going to require a lot of work.
All right. We good on that? We'll let John give you guys a little update on some of the other stuff here.
Who wants to talk about energy efficiency?
Let's go.
So, we know energy efficiency, sustainability is super important to this project. So, we kind of listed a laundry list of items pertaining to the building and the food service equipment in this report. I think it's a 2-page report. I'll just highlight a couple items for each category. Heather mentioned daylighting. We have a ton of windows in the cafeteria commons area right now. We have windows in all the music wing. The staff cafe area, it does not have any exterior walls, so we are adding skylights in there. So at least we'll have some natural daylight in that area. The existing exterior walls of your current cafeteria basically have zero insulation in the outside walls. So I listed what you have right now as an R value in those walls to where we're bringing it up to. The minimum is an R20. Your existing walls are about a 3.2. We're going up to 20 to 40.5 in the new remodeling of those walls. So that's a huge thermal improvement in that whole wing. Rooftop unit has to work less. It's also code minimum for the 20, so we're treating that. Auto flush valves for all the remodeled toilet rooms. Low to zero VOCs for all the floor finishes and interior finishes. We're upgrading the field house and the swimming pool lighting with all LED lights. That's a big increase. And then I won't go through all the details of the glazing, but we're treating the glazing, the large glass wall in the commons area appropriately to minimize heat gain and also trap the heat in the wintertime and trap the air conditioning in the spring and summertime. So that's through the building. Food service and kitchen equipment. We are recommending Energy Star rated appliances. That would be 8 total. They use 20% less utilities. The cost savings is actually about $12,000 over 10 to 15 years of those appliances. We're recommending variable speed fans on condensing units. That basically means those fans will slow down when it doesn't need to be used and speed up during operation. That's going to save around, so that's an add of $18,000, but the return on investment is about 5 to 6 years on those. And you have, let's see, you have 6 of those for the reach-in coolers. Similar to that, the exhaust fan hood, instead of having all on or all off, it'll have a variable speed. It adds 30% to that budget, but again, that'll have around $7,000 a year in savings in your energy bill, and the return on investment, it's listed as 2 to 3 years, it's probably 3 to 4 years. One item that we were looking into with our engineers is the drain water energy recovery system, which is the last item. This takes your hot water from your dishwasher, which is about 180 degrees, and it reuses that water in a coil system to heat up the cold water. So instead of having your booster pump taking the 70 to 80 degree water to go to 180, now it's 90 to 110 degrees going up to 180. Your booster pump has to work less. You get longevity out of that, a couple more years. So I had the ad listed there. Totally, we're probably around $50,000 to $60,000. We're still developing an exact payment return on investment for everything, but we're looking at about 5 to 7 years on most of those appliances and recommendations.
John's our detail guy, if you can't tell.
The nuts and bolts, right? So that's sustainability, energy efficiency. The next page is accessibility.
Actually, yeah, you guys have any questions or thoughts on that or anything on the sustainability stuff?
What was the ROI on that? You said in totality you thought?
Probably 5 to 7 years. Each one's going to be a little bit different. So the goal is to take, we're also waiting for some numbers to come back from our consultant too. So the goal is to take all of this as what the add is and then the ROI over how many years and just add all that up.
Yeah, that's really just on the kitchen equipment. That stuff is a huge energy suck, so that we're looking at these upgrades there. The LEDs and those sorts of things, that's just what you do. There's not really an ROI where, you know, they call it, I don't think we could buy the other stuff right now.
Right.
And how long do these appliances, these units, like, what do they last? Like, how long is
the lifespan?
Yeah, I mean, how often are people having to replace them?
So the Energy Star appliances, they forecast 10 years of utility savings. They're going to last longer than 10 years. I don't have an exact, you're not going to replace them every 5 years. But the longevity is probably similar to a normal appliance. You're paying up front for it, but it's not going to, the replacement is going to be similar on year-wise from a normal appliance.
Yeah, Brad, I think the equipment here in the kitchen, I mean, have you done a lot of replacement, a motor here, a fan here, something like that, or has there been a lot of maintenance in that area?
Very little with the new equipment here.
Yeah, so that's 10 plus years old in itself, so. And generally, that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be writ large replacement. We're going to replace components to keep it working.
To keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was curious, because that's some big equipment.
I know we've had discussions just about the idea of, there are net zero facilities happening with a cafeteria. Ed kind of talked about that with us back in the fall. That's not as possible to do a net zero cafeteria because of all the heating that has to happen.
Fortunately, and some of the things we have to do to achieve that, I don't think your site really works for it. We have to produce energy to do that, so geothermal and solar and all those components, I don't have a place to put a geothermal field to do it.
Next sheet, Brian. So this is an accessibility summary, just a handful of items that we're really touching upon on the project. A couple of the top line items were added in the past. So chairlift was added at Vaughn Building. Swipe cards were added at North Campus Elevators. Automatic door openers were at the field house. What we're including in the South Campus, there were some concrete flat work that was done in 2002 by the parking lot area. We talked about the courtyard. All the walking paths throughout the courtyard will be 100% ADA accessible. Cross slopes. There's the stairs that were going to get removed. So the slope from the doors, right now there's a 4-inch drop on one of the doors coming out. That's going to be 0-0 exit. Fully accessible all the way around the courtyard. The toilet rooms, the proposed modifications are push-pull for all the ADA entrances, so 12 and 18 inches, that's all going to be accessible. Revising clearances on all ADA stalls, clearances in front of plumbing fixtures, appropriate grab bars, modifying the flush controls on some of the toilets. So all of the toilet rooms would be 100% accessible. We're adding a passenger elevator to the G wing, the commons area, and that will connect to the B wing, so the elevator will be a lot closer for that access. High-low drinking fountains throughout the school, we're replacing those. Updated door hardware and closers on several interior and exterior doors. And then room signage where appropriate throughout the buildings.
Effectively, anything that we're touching, we have to bring up to accessibility code, but some of these are very much accessibility projects in themselves, such as the toilet rooms and some of the door projects.
And you had the elevator down there, yeah, right.
Which will, be very helpful on that side of the building. There's no real access over there, that second floor. So.
Any questions on that?
No.
The next exhibit is just an update on the air conditioning at both campuses. So this would be North Campus here. So the blue is already air-conditioned areas. Yellow is non-conditioned. Most of those are storage rooms, hallway, stairs, bathrooms. That looks purple in that. So that purplish area, I think it's orange and pink on my packet. But that is 2025, 2026 air-conditioned spaces. So you see kind of the west and the southwest corner, those would be the proposed. And then the next sheet, the floors above, pretty much the same area on the west hand and south side. So those would be the proposed air conditioning areas there.
Sorry, that green section up there on the page prior, Brian?
Yeah, one
Go
up.
back this way?
Yeah,
Right here.
that is all ready for air conditioning. It just does not have a unit yet, so that would be the last real section of the building, and then everything there would be pretty much 100% air conditioned. So,
So the only thing that's missing for the green area is a unit?
yeah, putting in the updated unit to serve that area. So it's piped and ready to go. So when we talked about, I think if you remember at South, we had to put in the chillers and the piping and all those pieces. That's ready to receive it. It's just when that unit goes, it's time. And the issue there is it's a little bit newer of a unit. It was kind of before the goal was to air condition, and so now you might be replacing it early if you do it.
Just have to slide to the right, maybe, it's really wide.
Which way are they? This is,
Oh, no, I see it.
there you go.
I see it.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, you So what we're looking at, though, with this North Campus, right, that's all prepped and ready to go, and then these being future state projects, is that pinkish?
And that-
Correct.
And that's that southwest corner of the building that we talked about.
So that would be the work to start in summer of '25.
Right,
Kind of
we haven't
see
looked at
currently.
it, that we haven't looked at.
Yep,
the cost.
currently air conditioned.
Correct. Projected cost. but-
Right, that would include, that.
That's what I was talking about
Okay.
earlier, that would be an 8.5 to 10
Yeah.
for that project. And, you can just see from the visual there, that would be a significant step towards this whole campus being air conditioned with
Yes.
the green part being the last
Yeah,
part.
we're getting there.
We're getting there.
And
So
then the last two sketches are South Campus, same thing. So
John, real quick. Go ahead.
Okay, I guess I'm just saying from that diagram then, the green, when are the units supposed to get here? Like, when do you anticipate?
It's not that they're ordered or anything. It's primed to receive air conditioning. It's just whenever that unit gets replaced would be when that would happen. And so that hasn't been scheduled in for any project yet. Right now, we're attacking this corner on the southwest side. We could
Okay.
certainly look at adding and replacing that unit as part of that work when we get there, if that's something the board wants us to do.
On the flip side, that the pink area has no piping or anything. It needs to be completely
And that's
renovated.
the 2025
Yeah,
that you
that's
guys are
right.
talking about?
That's the
So
2025
when we look at the 2025 work, again, we were focused on the classrooms. We'll give you a budget for what it takes to finish it off with that green area and let you guys know. I'm assuming you're going to want to get it while we're there. It would make some sense. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I have a question. For classroom 347, I'm just curious, on that whole floor, that would be the only room, aside from the bathrooms and that kind of thing, that would not be air conditioned.
It's that one right there.
Which one is that?
That's on my page.
Right here.
140.
It's right here.
Why would that be?
47, you said?
See that one right there?
347? Because I even looked I don't know, is it that it's not possible to be?
No, it's just, I have to go look at what that one is. You have so many different systems in your building.
It just seems so weird that
Yeah.
one room on the whole floor. Do you know what I'm saying?
So why is that?
No, understood. So sometimes they've gotten air conditioned because the room was remodeled and it's a unit vent, and so we just swap one to one. Sometimes it's a bigger project where we've done all the air handlers and we've done it. And so you have these little one-off rooms. So again, understanding what your guys' goal is for this, this was really intended to look at that corner that we know we're addressing. We'll look at all those one-off spaces and give you guys a budget of what it would take to wrap those up.
Yeah, I'm just curious because on the next page it had a bunch that was not, so that kind of made sense because they were together.
Yeah.
For my non-construction.
No, they're good questions.
It's I don't understand.
When the way the building's been built over the years, there's all these, additions and different mechanical systems that come on,
Got
and
it.
it's sort of a hodgepodge, and that's really been the challenge of trying to make this building work. And so that's why that whole corner that we're touching, that's on 5 different systems right now.
Okay, well,
So we're consolidating it down to 2.
Okay, well, that makes, because even on the next page, you have a study hall in the middle of blue a sea of blue. It's not, but I was like, I just didn't.
Well, so if you go down to the next page. So that was actually a conversation that we were having. So that study hall, currently, it's a unit vent, right? So we could go back one-to-one and put unit vents in there. One of the conversations we've had is the whole area in purple there, we're going to an air handler, which is forced air ductwork. It's a
Okay,
better
so it's a
system.
different form of.
So then it's like, well, if we're going to grab all that, do we want to make that forced air as well? Well, if we do that, then we have to rip the ceiling out and do the lightings, and then the dominoes keep falling.
Okay.
So the thought was, we can look at having ductwork there ready to receive it, and then when you remodel that room, we just connect it, or we could just replace the unit vent. But there's so many ways to approach it, and
So it's a bigger picture that I was looking at, because I was like, oh, it's like right next to the blue, and then the
right. No,
like
we
the
definitely
orange.
had that conversation a few times.
I just
so.
didn't know. Okay, perfect. Thank you for explaining.
Kind of what happened with the J-wing, where it was ready to go when we added connected those to the chiller, to the cooling tower this year, and fairly easily added the air conditioning to that, where the B-wing and the C-wing did not have any piping, had nothing, and we had to bring all of that in under that project.
And with all the added scope and stuff we presented today, I didn't want to just throw another room on there.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
The joys of old buildings.
Yes. You guys are making fantastic progress. I have to say, I have not seen anyone turn over this many spaces in any of the districts we work with. It usually takes a lot longer to get there. So kudos to it, what you guys are accomplishing. And I think that's it. Brian, you got one more? No?
No, you have.
I always like to end on a pretty picture.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Right? That was a lot. But necessary.
It's a lot. There's been obviously a lot going on. There's so many moving parts to this and a lot of scope. So I know you haven't seen us, but we've been very busy getting to this point. We have a lot to go. But we appreciate the time. And if any questions obviously come up as you think about it more, let Brian or Brian know, and we'll get back to you.
And I would say this at the beginning, like, kudos to Ed and his team. I mean, I said this a year ago, like, this whole project is just a continual feedback loop. They're constantly coming back to us with stuff. We're giving feedback. They're going back to the drawing board, coming back. It's been that way for 6 months, and it will continue for the project's done, so.
Yeah. Well, lots of exciting projects within that, and it's clear that you've been very busy, so thank you all for coming out here tonight and for all that you're doing to get us to that vision of where we're headed with our bond projects and beyond. So any additional comments, questions from the board?
And do you guys ever provide at any point during the process, I probably already know the answer to this because I'm sure that there's a huge cost involved in it, but like that 3D view of a space so that people get a sense of what it feels like in there? Do you ever have to do that? I mean,
So a couple things are going to happen, and we can talk about what those look like as we get further into it. The way that the modeling software works now when we draft, these images you see are a byproduct of that.
Okay, yeah.
So as they get further developed, these things become more photoreal, they have more detail to them. Ultimately, then what we would do, we can do just like a video file where you can hit play and it can walk you around. It may be a little more challenging for me to give you a clicking on a room to look around, but we can certainly have a 3D fly-through that shows you everything.
I was going to jump in, and that was a question I was going to have for the board. I shared with you guys last week the website and the communications. Like, that's all Ed and his team have shared those renderings, and as this evolves, they will share those types of, and we'll add those to the website.
That would be great. And that will be specifically about these projects, about the renovation projects, for the community to access.
Yep.
Great.
To that end, when we talked about making the music spaces seem more like the fly-throughs that we do, they actually have people walking around and playing instruments and all of that. It makes it look very lifelike. We've done a number of music spaces, so that is actually a real thing. So we'll have that for you guys as we get closer to putting this thing out to bid.
Thanks.
And in the interim, if the board's comfortable, as I shared with you guys, a month or two ago, and then on Friday, we're ready to launch the website and share those communications this week. We obviously, as we said throughout the night, we won't have any bids for the board to consider until February, March, but we've kind of been breadcrumbing this out over the last 6 months. It would be great to do an intentional communication with the website that kind of explains the journey that we've been on and kind of where we're going. And so if the board's comfortable, we'll launch that tomorrow or Wednesday and get it out.
Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm really excited about it.
Lots of excitement to share, so
Yeah.
that's great.
Long time coming.
Yep. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thank you all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us so much time today.
Oh, my gosh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for answering all of our questions and helping us envision. All right. Next on our agenda is the second opportunity for public participation. I'm seeing Marilyn shake her head, so we do not have any additional comments. And at this time, the board will move back into closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. That's Illinois State Code 5 ILCS 120/2C1. The board will not be taking action after closed session. Can I have a motion to move into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Marilyn, will you please call the roll?
Member Alboris?
Yes.
Member Albert?
Yes.
Member Beta Daniels?
Yes.
Member Dillon?
Yes.
Member Nava?
Yes.
Member Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and we'll take a quick recess before we, so they can break off and we can do that.